Rivals.com network. Worked for Rivals for, I think, 15 years. Rivals traded me great. Tony Tsoukalas, we worked together for quite some time. He's one of the best in the business in terms of being a beat writer. He is also a Boston Celtics fan, and the Boston Celtics beat up on, well, I'll have Tony tell you about it. So with that said, welcome in Tony Tsoukalas. Tony, what's up, man?
I wouldn't say the Boston Celtics beat up on anybody last night, but they did win, so that's good. They beat a Cavs team without Donovan Mitchell by 7 points. So we'll take it.
Tony's of the Rivals.com network. Tony, how long have you been covering Alabama football now?
Yeah, so I've been on the beat since 2016. I also covered them in college, but like professionally since 2016.
Yeah, so Tony's he has, if I know anything about Tony, he loves his work, he loves the Celtics, but he also has a team across the pond that he loves religiously on the soccer front. So I don't know if you want to talk about him now.
No, we're not even going to talk about that. I like Man United, but geez, it's too early in the morning to start my day off that bad, Kyle. Like, give these people a chance.
All right, so Tony, I appreciate you being here. And please check out Tony's work on Rivals front, Tide Illustrated, their Rivals site. He has great work and also helps out with the transfer portal. So, Tony, it's been, obviously a very busy, transfer portal season for you. One of the topics that I wanted to ask you about, and that was something that we were talking about yesterday, is when we talk about, the transfers that are coming in. And now that Coach Kalen DeBoer has put together his transfer portal pieces, it might be obvious, maybe not, but who do you think will be some impactful transfers from the jump as we start this season based off the guys who are coming in?
Yeah, well, you look at the two biggest needs I think they had were Caden Proctor, or the tackle position and the cornerback position. So I look at the players that are coming in from there. So you got Caden Proctor, Damani Jackson, and Deshaun Jones. Obviously, Caden Proctor at the tackle position, and then the other two at the cornerback position. I think those are all starters. And that's the biggest thing. And look, Rivals had me do a grade of Alabama's spring portal, and Alabama was one of the three teams in the SEC I gave like a flat A to. And a lot of people from other fan bases weren't as happy with that because I think, I think the overarching complaint was, they already had Caden Proctor on the team last year. Why do they get so much credit for bringing him in? But when you look at Caden Proctor and you look at the tackle options available, in the spring portal outside of him, they just don't compare. And so the fact that, Kalen DeBoer was able to bring back Caden Proctor was such a big get, because you basically got, I mean, if you want to think about this in like NFL draft standpoints, you basically got like a top 10 pick when at tackle, when all the rest of the tackles were late second round at best, so I think you really hit a home run there in a very weak tackle market. And then you look at the cornerback positions. I mean, I don't think either of the guys that they got are at the same level as Terrion Arnold or Kool-Aid McKinstry, but you got Damani Jackson, who was in our rankings, the third best cornerback in his class. Deshaun Jones is somebody that led Indiana in interceptions this year. Both of those guys need to improve their coverage skills in terms of like just on a regular basis. But I think that they're both capable of playing either the field or boundary positions in Kane Womack's defense. And so I think that they'll probably be starters. I know Xavier Brown had a good spring, but if you look back even at the 8A game, and I don't want to pick on Xavier Brown, but some of those plays where Alabama made big plays through the air, it was on a freshman cornerback. And I think Xavier Brown's capable of stepping in if he has to, but I think it's nice now that Alabama doesn't have to totally throw a true freshman into the fire. And like just with depth, it's hard to have depth in today's landscape where nobody wants to be a backup. So having a guy like Xavier Brown as a backup, I think is really big. So those two positions, I guess, so those three guys would be the ones that I would really highlight.
Tony, this Alabama needed a kicker. Connor Talty, I'm sure maybe he was going to be capable. But when I look to Alabama, I was, if you're not an Alabama fan, you're like, you guys don't have a kicker. And I felt that Alabama needed a kicker. and then they go out and they get the Lou Groza Award winner and Graham Nicholson. And sometimes, I'm not sure why, but we don't talk about special teams. It's like we talk offense, defense, and then forget about special teams. You got James Burnham coming in, who's going to be he's such a weapon. He was a weapon last year. And then you go and get the Lou Groza Award winner and Graham Nicholson. You think of all the points that Will Reichert had for Alabama, and now you have Graham Nicholson coming in. How big is that for this team to get not only a kicker, but a kicker of that quality?
I mean, finally for Alabama, they get a kicker who can win a Lou Groza Award, right?
Right.
I think it's kind of funny because I knew Graham Nicholson from Alabama fans complaining about him, why he didn't deserve the Lou Groza Award and why Will Reichert did. But no, I think he's an extremely consistent kicker, and it just takes that worry away. I think the person before me on your show talked about, shortening the field, or, I guess increasing the amount of space you can score from on the field. So Graham Nicholson, I don't think he was required to kick like a ton of long kicks, but he's 27 of 28. He doesn't miss. Mm-hmm. So really in the college game, I think that's the most important thing. I don't really think you need to be able to hit from 60, nor do I know if Graham Nicholson can hit from 60, but mm-hmm. It's really hitting those 40-yarders, right? And just being consistent with them. And I think he's going to do that. So I think it buys Alabama another year to find another kicker, and you've got that elite level guy. You talked about Burnham too on special teams. I mean, they've got a really good group of specialists, right? Because I think James Burnham had a really underrated year. And he's a guy that has made progress in every single year. So you would think that it's going to continue this year, or at least he's going to be able to maintain it. Because it's not like he went up and down and up and down. Like, he's been consistently better. And you got to remember, he didn't play American football before coming to Alabama. So I think he's only going to get better and better. So I like all the specialists. I like, they've got some guys that can really do work in the return game as well. So this could be across the board a really good special teams team, I guess is what you could say.
I guess I was going to ask you about our next bullet point here, which is the player you feel who will have the biggest breakout season that's not a freshman. But before I go to that, like if we had a game, if Alabama had a game tomorrow, who do you think would be like the kick returner and the punt returner? Like, just like, I mean, who do you think it would be?
Off the top of my head, I forget who was. I'd have to think about that more, because there's definitely an answer to that, and I didn't really look. On A-Day. I'm trying to remember who it is. Maybe the Undefeated could help me out with this one, but who is you can go back in A-Day, and I know there's some options.
Just ask the Undefeated. Who was the kick returner, punt returner for A-Day? I just wanted to, because that's something that we always
think that's a good way to get people into the game that wouldn't get into the game as much regardless. So I mean, if there's a way to get like a Jalen Mbakwe touches and keep him happy, then maybe that. And I'm not just exclusive to him, but like somebody like that, or somebody like a Richard Young, where maybe you don't get as many like for a kick returner, somebody that has talent that maybe you're not going to get them the ball as much, but that can make a play, and then you find a role for them. So I think that could be somebody. I would do it for somebody like that. I think you have enough athletes on this team that you don't necessarily need to give it to somebody like Kool-Aid last year, where you just had you don't want to give it to somebody that necessarily like you would lose if they got injured, because I think that there's plenty of people that are capable of doing that.
I wanted to ask you, and if you guys have a question for Tony, you can drop it inside the comment box before Tony gets out.
Get it answered, man. Jam and Law. Both of those are fine. Yeah, that's kind of like I could see that. Kendrick Law is a guy that can make a lot of plays in open space. Him and Jam, they're both hard runners too. So for kick return, they can break some tackles and stuff. I think that'd be good.
Well, and see, I've actually talked about this before. I didn't think about him as a kick returner, but maybe as a punt returner, just because of his yard after contact. Like, it didn't seem like you could bring this guy in first contact, which is Richard Young, right? Like, figure out a way to get him the ball, because I mean, he ran over Jeremiah Alexander a couple of times. So I mean, and I always like a punt returner who has speed but can also get off, first point of contact. So Travis thinks Emmanuel Henderson returned as few as well. But anyways, just wanted to ask you that. Tony,
Emmanuel Henderson's another good guy that like probably is not going to get or might not get as much action on offense as he deserves just because of the depth on this team. So another good
one. Let's see. Okay, this is a good one. Who do you think, like, you could, it doesn't have to be one. You can name a couple of them, but guys who could be breakout players that are not freshmen. So like non-freshmen breakout players that we kind of have our tabs on after spring, storylines that we know kind of going into the season. I know it's all hypothetical, but who are we kind of watching that could potentially have like a breakout season this year?
Yeah, I think probably the wide receiver position is the first place you look. We saw what Jeremy Bernard can do during 8-day game. I think Kobe Prentice is another person that I think is really interesting. And I actually think, there's a lot of excitement about Ryan Williams, but if you look at, if you just look at the experience on this team and you look at a guy like, if you're going to have Kayla and Bernard and Prentice, I think Prentice probably starts in the slot, and that's where I kind of like Ryan Williams to start off the bat. So I could actually see Prentice maybe getting some action before Ryan Williams. And I think they're going to have plenty of 4 receiver sets, and I think that Ryan's going to get plenty of action as well, and he'll be a difference maker. But early on in the season, I think that Kobe Prentice can be what a lot of people think that Ryan Williams is going to eventually be. I think he's going to take advantage of those roles. He's been with the team. He's been with Jalen Milroe for a while, so he's going to have some chemistry there. And look at the stuff that Jalen Milroe does the best is going deep hitting those long balls. And Kobe Prentice has got that kind of speed. If you were trying to find a person on the roster that was the most like Isaiah Bond, it would be Kobe Prentice. And I think that he's the kind of guy that is really going to benefit from the Boris system, where it's like, we saw what the board can do with all these receivers, and he's never had someone, as talented as some of the receivers he's going to have, at least from like out of high school, that kind of talent. So I think Kobe Prentice could be a big one. Jeremy Bernard. I guess, you could look at, I think it feels like it's kind of cheating to say Justice Haynes, but Justice Haynes could be the starting running back on this team, and he could get a lot of space to run. I don't know if either of those running backs are going to get, like 1,000 yards, especially since it's going to be Jalen at quarterback. I think like between splitting it between themselves, and then Jalen's going to pick up his yards just because that's what he does. So you might not have like a crazy number at the running back position, but I think that they're going to be pretty solid as well. I'm trying to think of some other guys that could like break out maybe on defense. You've got Jamarian Latham, I think, is the guy that I like at that bandit role. I know I did something on LT Overton. I think both those guys at the bandit role are pretty good. I think you would already argue that both of the linebackers broke out. So yeah, I think maybe I kind of like Jamarian Latham as that
what
guy.
About, what's kind of the pulse on like a guy like Q Robinson?
I like him. I don't. I mean, if I'm just being honest, I don't see him at that same level as I did with Braswell and Turner and Anderson. But maybe that's just because I haven't seen him enough. I mean, talk about special teams. He's a guy that dominated on that aspect. I think that there's some other guys too that could be almost like a committee. If he doesn't kind of take that by the horns, there's so much talent at that spot that that could just be like whoever's the hottest guy, right? And that could play the Wolf position, because basically if you look at the body types in this defense, Jack and Sam used to be pretty similar body types. Bandit and Wolf are different body types. Bandit's more of that like heavy defensive lineman, so you're adding it 20 or 30 pounds. So Alabama has a ton of wolves, I guess is what you would say, because they had all their Sam and Jack linebackers are now just in one position. So you've got a lot of depth. I think that's the deepest part of the roster. So Q Robinson is going to lead that pack, but I think that's a spot where Alabama has probably more options than it does, maybe even on both sides of the ball.
Tony, I don't know if you need to send a text message out, but you got the home opener. The time has been announced. It's at 6 p.m. So I don't know if you need to delegate that out against Western Kentucky. Just a quick little soundbite. Yeah, we'll get you out here in a minute. I know you have to write stories as they come in, so just a heads up.
We've got that covered. No worries. Yeah.
All right, cool. So just heads up. I just saw Alabama tweeted this out. So Western Kentucky and Alabama, the home opener will be at 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. So Just a heads up on that. And then yesterday got announced that Alabama and Wisconsin will be at 11 a.m. And then Alabama and Georgia, I think, is at 6:30, if I'm not mistaken. So those are kind of the times are starting to come together for some of these games. Tony, what about a player like Keon Keeley?
Yeah, so they're moving him to the bandit role, so he's kind of like
Mhm.
a hybrid of the two. I think he's got potential. You look at like if he's going to play a lot. I mean, maybe I could see him serving in a different version of the bandit role because he's
Mhm.
not like you body type, right? He's kind of like a tweener between those two spots,
Yeah.
so he's not going to be exactly a like for like. I think Latham and Overton are pretty much the same dude, and they're built the same way. So maybe you can do something different with Keeley. So maybe there's a package for him. I
Mhm.
don't expect him to be a like one of the first names you mentioned as a difference maker on this defense. I'm not saying he can't develop into one, and I'm not even necessarily saying he doesn't have a role, but he's not somebody I pencil in as like having a breakout year, just because I think his role will be more of a novelty thing than it will be a main thing.
I wanted to ask you, so during this springtime, meeting all of the new coaches, getting to interview all of the new coaches, talk about, was there one coach that particularly impressed you, or just if you could talk about just a couple of them and kind of like this new energy, or what was it like for you as a reporter getting to now talk to assistant coaches where you really haven't had that opportunity in the past under Coach Saban? How different was that for you, and kind of what stood out about their personalities the more you got to talk to some of these coaches through spring?
Yeah, it was fun just to get to talk to them, because they've kind of all just been like faceless, entities. Like I don't like we haven't really gotten to like get to
Hmm.
know any of them, and it's only been a couple of times each because they spread them all out so we could meet them all. But no, that seems like a really good group. I mean, just on paper, it's obviously a really good group. In terms of personalities that kind of stood out, um, if I was like so Jamarcus Shepard is probably
Yeah.
the most energetic, and that's his personality, just like the intensity, his energy is like just jumps off the page, and that's one of the first things you notice. Like if I had to hand out a like would most likely want or would most want to get a beer with you award, I think it'd be Kane Womack. I just like his like style. I think he'd be funny. I haven't really gotten to talk with him or anything like in depth, but just I just like his like personality and demeanor, and it just seems like he's just a really cool guy. Some of them are just like you're trying to bounce around, so you don't really know. I mean, like Sheridan's kind of like what you would
Hmm.
expect. Had like so he's not an old guy, but
Hmm.
he's got like a huge family because he's got like I don't know if he's got like 3 or 4 kids or something, because I was walking down the steps of Malmore facility late, and he was with his wife, and I think he had like 3 kids already, and it's just like I was like, man, I can't even imagine, on
Uh-huh.
top of being as busy as you are. But no, he, I met like for 15 seconds, met his family, and then they seemed really nice. You know, all the coaches seemed pretty cool. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? There wasn't really one that I can't ever say his name right. Is it Kapelovic or is it Cap?
It's
Is that it?
so I've done this because I say it all the time.
He seems
Kapilovic.
cool though.
Kapilovic.
Kapilovic. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, he seemed pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does. Before I ask you about basketball, you were at the region's pro-am golf event where you had Coach Saban, you had Coach Kalen DeBoer. Was there anything, and I know you wrote like everything that Coach, Kalen DeBoer said. Was there anything impactful out of that? And people always, the two biggest things that we talk about sometimes are for people who don't follow, because a lot of people don't follow it every single second, right? There's like periodically, come in, they're just general fans. But a lot of people don't understand that Ryan Williams, they're like, why wasn't he here? He's, mid-year enrollee. But like this Parker Brailsford thing, because he came in and like he never snapped the ball. Was there anything like impactful that Coach Kalen DeBoer said during that Regions prom that kind of made your ears perk up?
Yeah, I mean, well, for Parker Brailsford, DeBoer's maintained that he's going to be fine. At Regents, he said that he'll be back with the team when they begin summer workouts. I have no reason not to take Kalen DeBoer's word seriously, but I also know that like, why would a coach, if something wasn't fine, say that it wasn't fine? And let's just kind of call a spade here. it is somewhat alarming that a center who is underweight from an SEC standpoint, not saying he can't play, comes into spring camp, does is held out of spring camp the majority of it for a non-football reason. So there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong.
Yeah.
Then is just gonna come in and win the job in the fall with no issues, no chemistry issues, no
Yeah.
you know bonding issues. We're just supposed to just ignore all of that. Seems like a stretch, right? I mean, I think getting Gino Vandemark from Michigan State, I think, was such a big ad, because if things don't go to plan with Parker Brailsford, I think you have a nice backup plan. I think Gino's a guy that could come in and play the center position. He played a lot of right guard at Michigan State, but he also worked at center. Maybe not as much during games, but that's I mean, you can even find quotes from Kapelovich kind of saying that he likes him at both spots. So obviously Gino's a little bit bigger. I think he's like 6'5", 320 or something like that. So I mean, if the thing doesn't work with Parker Brailsford, and for whatever reason, whether it's whatever he's struggling with off the field, or whether it's just adjusting to the SEC, whatever it is, because I'm not privy to it, and I don't think anyone really is. If that doesn't work, I think having someone in Gino Vandemark is a big deal. I think he'll be capable of coming in and starting. Let's remember that Landon Dickerson wasn't. I think he came in as a guard from Florida State, so kind of same body type. You'd have a bigger center, but he's
my favorite. I think he's everybody's favorite center over the past years. I equate it kind of like I've been covering the team, for the past 8 seasons. So like he's the guy who stands out to me. And you're right, like his size was impressive to me. Same thing with like Bradley Bozeman or even Ross Pierce-Baker. Like those guys were larger type centers. And if you think about it, Alabama lost Ferguson, right? He was playing some center. He left Florida State. Seth left. And then you had James Brockermeyer leave. So
I don't pay attention to the depth at Florida State, so maybe I'm just totally clueless on this. But Terrence Ferguson has to be like shooting himself right now, because here's a guy that left because of playing time, and with Brockermeyer leaving, he's probably your center if things. I think if you could look into that crystal ball, I'm not sure if they go and get a Gino Vandemark if they already had a Terrence Ferguson. Now, I don't know. Maybe he's like starting at Florida State. I don't really know their offensive line setup. So maybe I'm totally wrong here. And maybe he just wanted to go there anyways. But yeah, there would have probably been a spot for him to work his way into this starting offensive line.
Yeah, I think you're 1,000,000% right. I wanted to transition while we have you for up till 9:30, and then we have Ty Hayes from Around the Table Sports coming on about basketball. Because now, like you and I, so Tony and I, we used to work together for quite some time. I loved working with Tony, tremendous work ethic, and we started out together. So I move over to Tuscaloosa, and the very first video of this YouTube channel that we uploaded was of Alabama basketball. So Tony and I have it. I like to send it to Tony every once in a while. It's from 8 years ago. And I send it to Tony every once in a while. But Tony and I are outside of the Coleman Coliseum. You can't hear what we're saying. And we had just covered a basketball game under Avery Johnson. So to look at where Alabama basketball was then to where it is now, there's clearly been a large metamorphosis. And this particular team has so much. But before we get there, Tony, you've seen Nate Oats from day one to where we're at right now. I mean, I don't know if there's any, if you could even encapsulate it in those few minutes, but it's been remarkable to see the job that he's done here at Alabama. Can you just talk a little bit about Nate Oats before I talk to you about the roster?
Yeah, I think Nate Oats has just done an excellent job. I think he's probably one of the top 5, or if not top 5, definitely top 10 coaches in college basketball. He came in here, he recruited well right away, and he's just consistently gotten better. He stuck to his scheme. There's been plenty of people that have doubted whether Alabama's high 3% volume of threes and the output, and whether or not it would be I guess conducive to the NCAA tournament. And obviously Nate Oats proved that you can make a Final Four run with it, and that it's a successful system. It's modern basketball. I think probably one of Nate Oats is a great recruiter, but I think one of the best things he has in his up his sleeve is this is a system that's very similar to what they use in the NBA. So you get guys that want to play in the NBA, they want to do this and they want to get ready for this and be utilized the way that maybe NBA teams would utilize them. So Nate Oats' system offers that. It's fun to play in. He's a fun guy. He's a witty, charming kind of guy, and he's a tough coach to play for. But he's also I could see where he could win you over and really sell you on his vision. And so he's done an excellent job. And Alabama is going to be maybe preseason favorites. If not, they'll be one or two. I'd put him at number one heading into this season.
Now, when we talk about the roster, what can you give us the update on like Mark Sears? I know there hasn't been no official announcement, but like, what is the date that he has to decide whether or not he's coming back to play with this Alabama basketball team? We're talking about Mark Sears.
Yeah, so it's 29th, right?
I think you're right. Yeah, it's coming up here. What, do you have any like feeling of like?
I think he's coming back. I think it's a weird thing with him measuring in at 5'10", because the point I made, yesterday when that happened was that like he didn't shrink, right? Like it's not like he lost 2 inches in the last 2 weeks. He was playing at 5'10" throughout the season. When if you liked this film at 5'10", then guess what? He was 5'10" then too. So I mean, like that's one thing. He would be one of the shortest players, if not the shortest. I forget if I saw a tweet, but like in the NBA, so that's concerning. I think that's probably going to be the ultimate reason why he comes back. It's kind of the same thing in the NFL, right? There's teams that are looking for reasons not to draft you. Well, being that short is a reason. I think that probably contributes to a team maybe not drafting him. But then again, if there's a team that really liked this film, that's not something that has changed. It's not like he got injured or anything. So he also had a really good vertical. So you can kind of make up with some of the lack of height with a good vertical. There might be a team that, just falls in love with him. I just think that he's probably going to come back. I just think, and I think that will, I'm not sure how much it's going to help his draft stock, but it gives him a chance to be an Alabama legend. I think if he comes back and has a similar year to this year, I think he's the best player in Alabama basketball history. And he could be a part of their first national championship team. Because I mean, that's the expectation for this team, which is crazy to say. But if he comes back, I think that's the number one goal. You have a team very capable of winning a national title.
Ty, we'll bring you on in just a few minutes, man. I got Tony on for just a few minutes. That's crazy to say that he could be one of the best basketball players ever. When I think back in the short time, I mean, I've covered Alabama for a decent time, but like Colin Sexton coming out of here was crazy. And I always think back to the game where he was playing 3-on-5. It was the same day as the Iron Bowl, and he dropped out.
Paid attention. In a normal year, that game probably gets so much coverage. But Alabama not only played in an Iron Bowl, they lost an Iron Bowl. And everyone was concerned about their playoff chances, which interestingly enough, that was the year that they beat Georgia in the national title game and with Tua. But, we were all, I guess, concerned about either the Iron Bowl or then like, where does Alabama go now? And can they make the playoffs still? And we kind of just glossed over a game where Colin Sexton almost beat a team, giving out like fake high fives at the free throw line because there wasn't actually any teammates there.
That was
a crazy game.
This transfer that they got in, Chris Amori from Rutgers, is he the missing link that Alabama basketball needed? Is that an easy question?
Well, he is like what they needed this past year and what they'll need this coming year as well, just as that rim protector. I don't think he's a guy that's going to put up 20 points a game or really be a star offensive player. I think he can contribute a little bit on offense, but really he's your defensive guy. He's going to allow Grant Nelson to play the 4. He's also probably going to keep Grant Nelson on the court longer, because I mean, if you're playing the 5 as Grant did, he proved he's capable of doing that, but he would also get into foul trouble. I think he's going to get in less foul trouble at the 4. So I think you're going to see an improved, season from Grant. As far as just the rim protector, I think that's exactly what Alabama needed. Cliff Amori averaged 2.9 blocks per game last year. I think he
Mhm.
like led all of the Power 5 centers in blocks.
Huh.
So I know Power 5 is not like as big of a deal in basketball, but like
Sure.
he was one of the top
Yeah.
block leaders in college basketball, and so I think that's exactly what they needed. He's kind of like, well, even better, but like, they were kind of hoping that they were going to get something like that from Charles Bediako before he unexpectedly left to the draft. Well, Cliff is kind of that on steroids in
Yeah.
terms of being that protector, that big guy. You talk about going up against a Klingon or going up against an Edie, or this year they're going to have to possibly go against Cockburner twice. He's the guy you want defending those guys and then really shutting them down.
And then you have LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway coming in. I don't know if you've had the chance to watch LeBaron. I think I'm saying his name right, Philon. Like his highlights. Like I was watching him the other day, and like he's an elite point guard. I mean, he was like, I can't
top 30 players, top 40 players that are coming in. I mean, Aiden Holloway too had a not great season at Auburn, but is a really top talent. It's so crazy because these players like 10, 12 years ago, you just get one of these players in a class in Alabama basketball, it'd be just going crazy. I mean, like one of Holloway or Philon's just not going to play that much, because Mark comes back. So it's just kind of funny that like these guys are huge difference makers. They look just like 1 to 12 on the lineup. It's just crazy. Like you could make the argument, and I'm not even trying to put anyone down. This is just me making an argument here that like Mo Diabate is like the worst player on the team, and he won you a tournament game last year off the bench. So the fact that you would have, I mean, it's really hard to designate worst. You put that in big quotation marks because there's nobody really bad on this team. If you look at other like end of the bench options, it's like Nas Cunningham was a former number 1 overall recruit, and I think now he's like somewhere ranked in the 30s or 40s. But like he's going to be at the end of your bench. He might not play this year. It's crazy that you have a guy like that in a lot of years is somebody that you're like super counting on. Maybe Alabama finds different roles. And I think one of the biggest things that this team will have is if there's injuries, they definitely have guys to plug those holes. And I think that's huge. I don't think you're going to be missing anyone the way that you were missing when Latrell Wrightsell went out. Like you're going to have guys that can step in. Maybe they won't be the preferred option, but they'll be, really good replacements. And I don't think you're going to miss a beat too often on this season, regardless of how things go, barring like an injury pandemic, like just like of like, barring like just, I don't know, a pile up in practice one day, knock on wood, I guess, for Alabama. But I think that they're going to be just fine when it comes to withstanding the season.
Tony, before you go, can you tell people where they can find your work? And I know you always have different projects going on, but what are you guys tracking right now during the month of May? I know it's not the busiest time ever, but maybe you have some sort of series going on, or can you tell people where to read your guys' work and like what else you guys got going on at Tide Illustrated, part of the Rivals.com network?
Yeah, so it's tideillustrated.com, or you can go to alabama.rivals.com. It'll take you to the same place. You can follow us at Tide Illustrated on X, or you can follow me at Tony_Tsoukalas. I don't know if my name is out there, but if you type in TSOU, you'll find me on X. As far as what we're doing right now, I mean, it is kind of a slow time, but we have recruiting full swing, and really the series we're doing right now is kind of interesting. We're doing a spotlight on all the transfers, so I'm going in order. In terms of when they committed. So we did LT Overton yesterday. We did Damani Jackson today. Tomorrow we'll do Nicole Bethren. And we'll just go down the list and then kind of do a little profile and what to expect from each of Alabama's incoming transfers this year. So that's fun to kind of follow. It's kind of like what we've been talking about today, right? But in story form. So that's a fun little feature to follow as well.
Yeah, so definitely please support Tony both on social media and on Rivals.com. Rivals.com, I was with them for quite some time. They always treat me very fair, and they have a really great website, and definitely support Tony. I put his Instagram handle, his Twitter handle inside the comment box. So we love having you on, Tony. We really appreciate your time today, And thank you very much for joining us to talk a little bit of football, a little bit of basketball, and we'll catch you some other time.
Awesome, man. Hey, thanks for having me on.